All right, folks. Well, thanks for joining us. We just want to give people a chance to log in here. But I just want to welcome you to our panel today. As you can see, and as you know, since you just joined us out of a bunch of different panels you could choose from, we're talking today about building local coalitions for statewide action. And we're excited to talk about a number of things with you all around how we use coalitions locally and then really make some big impact statewide through that. So excited to have you all join us. I know you had a lot of choices on the panel or on the list of panels that you could join today. So I appreciate you all joining us. And I know the panelists feel the same. And we hope you have fun and learn a lot. We're doing this as a workshop, so there'll be some opportunity in towards the end for us to all kind of share some time together. So with that, I will talk to you all a little bit about sorry. You'll learn fast. I am bad at technology, so my apologies. Let me see if I can get it to go slower here. Chase, help me. What am I doing wrong? Okay, let me see.
What happened?
When I scroll, it goes like.
Try just tapping one of the arrows just once.
Nothing happens.
What about the down arrow?
Nope.
Nothing, huh?
Nothing.
Got a very sensitive scroll.
I know, apparently. Well, let's see if I can. I'll try to land there, y'all. Thanks for being patient with me. But I'll just talk to you about what our agenda is. I'm just going to exit out really quick, and then maybe you can. Maybe y'all can see. But we are planning to talk to you all about. We're going to have two different groups today talk to us about what kind of coalition work they are a part of. We have Our Future LA, which is based in LA County, and we have Run Residents United Network, which is based all over the state, but we have folks from the Bay Area today joining us with just kind of sharing some of what they're doing. And then we're going to talk about what coalition building looks like, how to do it, what are some of the challenges people face, etc. And then we'll close out with, as I said a moment ago, doing workshop and just having a discussion with you all. We really want to have this be an opportunity for you all to share back and forth with us about the work that you do and how we can kind of lend some support in terms of what folks have been doing in their regions that might help in yours. So with that, I want to start with some introductions. So I'm Sarah Thomas with United Way of Greater Los Angeles. I'm also a part of the Our Future LA Coalition, which is, as I mentioned, one of the coalitions that we're talking about here today. And with us, we have two people from each of the coalitions that I mentioned. So we have Jutta Horn, and she is coming in from Run. And she's also with several other kind of groups and coalition works, including Home Rise. And then we have Anak Swool, also from Home Rise and Run. And then on the Our Future LA side, we have Kelly with ACE and Our Future LA, and we have Chase, and he comes with Our Future LA and also Climate Resolve. I'm going to share a little bit more about each of them as we kind of enter into talking about each of these coalitions. So the first coalition that we're talking about today is going to be Our Future LA. But before that, I mentioned that at the end, we're going to be doing some kind of workshop style discussions with you all. And we want you to have some time throughout this to work on a Mentee that we've created. So
Sarah, you muted yourself.
I had a host unmute me. Okay, so thank you. Sorry, I just got a message that someone muted me. But so we have this Mentee that we want folks to fill out while we are doing our discussion. So if you go to mentee.com and use this code here, 83841452, and then there's going to be a couple of questions that you can go through. Be sure each one you submit because there's a number of questions. So don't just do the first one, do the whole series. And then at the end, we're going to use those results to have the conversation with you all and have that kind of help us to chat through with you about coalition work and what challenges you're facing and how we can kind of lend some insight into those pieces. So be sure to do that while we are discussing. So now I'm going to go into our actual kind of the heart of our agenda here with starting with a case study on Our Future LA. So I'm going to kind of reintroduce, but with a little bit more, I guess, zhuzh. I'm going to talk about the two folks that we have on the call from Our Future LA. So I mentioned Kelly. Kelly, she's been actively involved in civic engagement with local, county, and state governments. She's part of ACE, which is a statewide coalition and member organization. And she also is with Our Future LA, as I'd mentioned. And she was recently appointed to the Housing Advisory Commission by the LA County Board of Supervisors for Supervisorial District 2, which is incredible. And she does so much more than this. It's not even funny. So Kelly is an incredible woman. We're excited to have her here. And then we have Chase. Chase is working over at Climate Resolve, where he organizes grassroots campaigns and conducts policy analysis around housing, transportation, land use, and climate resilience issues in the LA region. So they come with kind of two different lenses to the work, but both really important parts of our housing work. So I'm going to actually pass it over to the two of them to talk about Our Future LA and some of the work that we have been doing through that coalition. And Kelly, I think you're starting, so I'll pass it over to you to launch us off.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me? All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about Our Future LA. This coalition has a longer name than OFA. It is Our Future LA Coalition to End Homelessness. And we came together as a bunch of, well, in housing, I guess we'd be strange bedfellows, to end, pardon me, to come up with solutions to end homelessness that are pretty comprehensive. The alliance between traditional housing justice and folks who are YIMBYs, yes, in my backyard. These are folks that want to build, and we're folks that want to connect people with housing. And so we're doing things a little differently. We're having what turn out to be heated discussions on assembly floors within our walls, our Zoom walls and our spaces. And we work by a consensus, and the demographics of the Oakland community, 76 nonprofits, areas of housing, business, folks who are specifically about ending homelessness with the individual, and folks who are about ending homelessness by building housing and making sure that there's stable housing supply for folks. And it is multiracial, a very diverse group. It really is the future of LA. Who is the coalition? I think we went into that. Our 76 nonprofits represented here. I won't go through all of them. And the 4 principles of unity. Let's see. Sarah, what are the 4 principles of unity?
Sorry, I'm trying to get, there it is.
All right. So these 4 principles of unity are to help people stay in their current homes. And this is prevention. We want to do homelessness prevention. We want to create more affordable homes in LA County. This has to do with production and ensure every and creating independent countrywide housing solutions. So we're looking at preservation, we're looking at production, and then we're looking at protection. And these are all the sides of housing that we need to pay attention to in the production of these bills to end this crisis. With that, I am going to give it away to the wonderful Chase. He is going to do the heavy work on SB 679. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. If I could talk a little bit about one of our legislative strategies. Kelly outlined those 4 kind of core values, and we're working on local and state level policies to accomplish all of those goals. But one bill that we're particularly excited about, because it encompasses a lot of those things at once, is a bill called La Casa, the LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency. And what it would do is it would create an affordable housing agency in Los Angeles, run by the state, with really, really exceptional measures of citizen oversight that could do quite a lot of things. So on top of just revenue for the production of affordable housing, we have an included set aside for renter support and protection, for housing preservation, as I mentioned, the creation of affordable housing, but also promoting affordable housing ownership. Yeah, I like the love in the chat for SB 679. So it's something that we're very excited about. You know, we've worked really hard on organizing and, you know, in wonky policy rooms, trying to shape this. And so to make those decisions, if we can go to the next slide, I don't know, do we have a slide on our, or should I just talk to our structure? Okay, great. We have worked out a really important governance structure, and that's kind of the bulk of what we're hoping to talk about today, is how the machinery operates, right? And so we have a great organizing committee of 5 very dedicated nonprofits that are bringing issues down to the steering committee, which is quite a bit larger. I think we're around 23, is that right, Sarah? And that is where we discuss broader issues on a bi-weekly basis. And then we also have full coalition meetings to update our members. But of course, that's only sort of the top-down structure. We also have sort of bottom-up programming that we implement as well. So we have a leadership committee where we're really trying to center the voices of those with lived experience. And then of course, we have committees that are dedicated to issue areas. So issues also come from committees and make their way back up to the steering committee as well. So we have kind of 2 directions for our decision making. You can see some of the subcommittees there. And then in each of those spaces, we make our decisions by consensus. So we'll come to a consensus. If we can't reach that, we'll further discuss the issue. And if we need to make amendments to whatever we're proposing, then we can do that. But that's the gist and the pith of it.
Thanks, Chase, and thanks, Kelly, for sharing with us about our future. So we wanted to talk a little bit about Run as well, just talk about a couple of different ways of doing coalition work, member work, just kind of different types of organizing across the state. So for that, we're going to talk about Run. And let me see if I can get it to, there it goes. So I'm going to pass it off again. I'll do a more detailed introduction of our 2 speakers from Run. So Jutop Horn is our first person, and she is a community leader and member of Run with lived experience in homelessness and is a resident of supportive housing in San Francisco. And then we have Anak Sewell, who is also a part of Run and is formerly homeless community organizer who lives in supportive housing and is living in deeply affordable housing in the Bay Area. So I'm going to ask them a couple of questions about the work that they do, and then we'll get to hear a little bit more about this different type of coalition. So first off, I think this is for both of you. So I wanted to ask, what is HomeRise PPCO and Run?
Hello, Naxel.
Hey, everybody. I apologize that I'm not on camera right now. I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'm here. Hi. Jutop, do you want to lead it off with who we are?
So we're Resident United Network, part of Run San Francisco, and I'm talking about Run, correct?
Yes.
So we really love have voice level where we can actually make choices and help with the effective change in terms of the housing and the affordable housing and what our voices mean. I think it's really important to have an organization like this in not just a local and legislative matter, but just a space where we feel people with lived experience that we're worth it, that we are a whole person, that it's not about just housing the homeless community or housing a homeless person in a house and give them the key and that's it. You know, it's about, okay, let's come together. Let's see if they're really doing what they're supposed to do. And if we don't like what we're doing, let's see how we can work together and bridge that gap so that we as, you know, people who have experienced homelessness and everything like that, we like to feel like, you know, that we get a real second chance, you know, and that when people look at us, it's really important that they just see us for who we are. And that's why Run was really attractive. And not only that, Run was really brought to my attention through a Knoxville, and he's been pretty much my inspiration from the beginning. And so when they was brought to me, what really drew me to Run was that Run really helps, the residents in this network with training. So they had this whole summer, they had the Run Marathon. I thought was great to actually train the people that are trying to have a voice. And it was really an educational, and they're very supportive. So that's really how I got here. And I'm just really excited to be here for the first time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so HomeRise is an affordable housing provider of supportive housing for mostly formerly homeless people. We have about 17 different properties throughout the city of San Francisco, and a community of duplexes on Treasure Island. And quite a few years ago, we, along with our Housing California partners, recognize that there's a real need for more organizing done that lifts people with lived experience up to the same table as decision makers. And so across the state of California, we worked with some partners, other affordable housing providers, to create the Residents Unite Network. And what the Resident Unite Network does is it takes people with direct lived experience and people who are affordable housing renters, and we help to train each other to tell the stories of our experiences, so that when we talk to decision makers, we're able to sway them. And so how this works with coalition work, obviously, is that we're kind of disparate communities. We're made up of San Diego. We're made up of the Central Valley. We're made up of the Bay Area. We're made up of Sacramento. And so each of those different communities, we definitely have different experiences and also different affordable housing needs and development needs. As you can imagine, space requirements in San Francisco may be quite different than in the Central Valley for affordable housing. But we all have that lived experience that we bring to the table, and Run helps us to make sure that we're able to speak our truth to power with the decision makers.
Also, I want to also piggyback on what PPCO is. So PPCO is the the public policy and community organization within HomeRise. HomeRise used to be called Community Housing Partnership for those who have been at the Housing California for many years. So we just changed our name in January. And why it's important to have an organization within an affordable and permanent housing organization that gives that voice is because, sometimes you want to find the right solution, but you just don't know. And we have your solution. So you come ask us. But I think PPCO is really an important asset for the local coalition or organization, because I feel like when people are settled, it's good to help promote, and kind of showcase. And that's kind of why I'm kind of here, to just kind of be the lived experience, be that person you could see, when you give housing is key and housing is essential, and housing is, a human right, then you can understand why an asset like PPCO, which is an organization that helps with policy change. So we help make policy change, move policies in a local level. And so it's really nice to have that local, and then we can branch it with the Run, if that makes any sense.
And I think what's really cool about the way that our model works is we definitely at PPCO, public policy community organizing is what PPCO stands for. We work with our residents to speak their truth to power. So when we go into coalitions, we want our residents to come with us and speak with us. And similarly at Run, we do that, but we do it on a broader scale. Once a year, we have a retreat. Sometimes in the past, it's been in person. And we really dive deep into what we think should be the next law in California. And in fact, we've actually created this really amazing process called There Ought to Be a Law that everybody really looks forward to, where we have a brainstorm session with affordable housing renters from across the state, directly inputting what they think would be the most winsome law to break down barriers for affordable housing renters. And so in this past session, we really heard from the affordable housing renters in our network that it's really important to focus on how people are coming in from reentry when people have incarceration histories. We know that if they're not supported and if they don't have housing opportunities, then recidivism is a big issue, as well as the racial consequences of the incarceration pipeline. And so we're working with lawmakers to support a bill 1861 to make it to where people that are reentering from incarceration would be supported and have housing. Another big thing that we've heard from our affordable housing renters is that it's so complicated and burdensome, especially for no and low income people, to navigate the affordable housing application process. And so when we went through the We Ought to Be a Law process, we heard the demand that there be a very easy application process that enables you to fill out one application that would be then applied to affordable housing throughout the state, making it obviously a lot easier for people to navigate that. You know, at PPCO, we've recognized that people have experienced homelessness. If you ask questions about their housing history and how long they were homeless, each time it retriggers people. So you can imagine if you're having to fill out 35 applications in order to find affordable housing, you're kind of re-traumatizing yourself every time you have to do that. So we have a Assembly Bill 1961, which is really amazing, and it creates a one-stop application process for affordable housing in the state of California. And that directly came from our Resident United Network constituency. I think that's really cool. That's the way that legislation and true change happens, is by direct input of communities that are impacted.
I so appreciate hearing that from both of you. And I think that I always really love seeing there ought to be a law, and the fact that a bill came out of it this year that is moving through is just so exciting. So congratulations on that. I know you all have touched a bit on, you know, kind of how the coalition works. Can you share a little bit more about who is part of it? Like what types of folks are actually members of RUN? And I think, Jude Tophorn, can you take this one?
So I'm sorry, what was the question, Sarah?
No worries, it's who is part of it. So like what types of folks make up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought Anoxel touched on that. So pretty much RUN is a statewide organization, and the people who are part of the membership are all people who are living in affordable housing today. So it's really, we're really down on the ground, you know, level, where we can actually see what's really going on up top. And that's what makes it really strong, because then we can actually see where we need to work on, and then really fight for that, to make sure that we get, you know, fair and equitable housing, and that we are treated, you know, with respect and dignity.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Just making sure that the folks that are actually directly impacted are the ones that are bringing representation to the work that is going on for affordable housing, and in various ways. So I appreciate that. I'm not so is there.
Oh, I was going to say, and we all love what we do, because it's all on our own accord, you know, and so we're very passionate about what we're doing. We love to pay it forward, and everybody that's here, you know, we're really dedicated to making sure that there's more affordable housing, you know, because sometimes we get forgotten and get through the cap, you know, we get left through the cracks. And so I want to make sure that I seal that crack before it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anoxel, I know that you spoke a little bit about what you all have been working on now in this year. Are there any kind of highlights that you want to share about some of the dynamic coalition moments that you've encountered in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of these are actually more with the work that I've done with Home Rise, public policy, community organizing. I've been there with them for 9 years, and one of the main some of the campaigns that we've worked on have been really achieved through coalition work. So one of the big ones that we worked on was the ban the box, the fair chance ordinance, and it was really cool. The coalition that brought the Fair Chance Ordinance was made up of like the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, housing rights organizations, prison abolitionists, and the Chamber of Commerce. So as you can see there, sometimes there's disparate views, but you can find common ground often, and that's what really makes coalitions powerful. Another big one was when we passed Prop C. That coalition saw homeless advocates, housing advocates, and tech billionaires coming together to win $300 million for affordable housing in San Francisco. And then recently we had a coalition made up of affordable housing consumers and SRO residents that were pushing for alongside public supportive housing property managers for 30% income cap for people living in public supportive housing, because there were some people that were having to pay upwards of 90% of their limited income to live in a tiny SRO that was run down, and it's just not acceptable. So we formed the 30%, 30 Right Now coalition and won, so that all of affordable housing in San Francisco is 30% of your income for rent.
Those are some really incredible wins. Those
Absolutely.
are not small. So that's really incredible, and it's always inspiring to hear work that other folks are doing, especially from other parts of the state. You know, we each most of us are kind of regionally focused in one way or another, and so being able to hear different pieces of work that are happening statewide is inspirational, and also brings hope, I think, to keep fighting for the same type of laws and different types of advocacy efforts in the various areas.
I also wanted to add, we would never have won any of those if we didn't have people with the lived experience, people who were impacted at the table in all the decision making, from the strategy to the communications, to really being the forefront of those campaigns.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. That's actually a perfect transition to our next section. So we're going to now specifically focus on some different types of challenges that coalition building can really address, and how we do that. So Anaxel, I know that we've been putting you on the spot a lot in the last few minutes, but can you share with us a little bit about what coalition-based organizing is?
Yeah, so coalitions are a little bit different than networks or partnerships or alliances, and I think the simplest way to kind of parcel out what those are around the decision making of those entities. So a coalition comes together, and the way I see it, it's more that the hierarchies within that coalition are eliminated, and everybody is on equal decision making ground, so that so that there's not a level to the playing field. Some of the accountability around a coalition is that they come around a single campaign and all agree upon common work. It often involves high levels of commitment during the campaign, but the mop up afterwards, there's not as much. The resources that are used are each coalition partner is responsible for portions of the work. It involves an analysis of the cost of the efforts going in, so that people can figure out how much of their time, how much of their resources are going to be needed to spend at the table, at the coalition table. And the credit can be a big issue around coalitions, like who won. It's not one organization that wins, it's the whole coalition, so that it's lifting all boats. And one of the reasons for success around coalitions is that there are strength in numbers. If you have one or two organizations that are trying to achieve aims. There's all sorts of strategy and you know tactical analysis, power analysis that happen. But if you have a coalition, a diverse coalition of 15 different groups or 5 different groups, you're broadening your power base and your mobilization power. So when coalition partners agree to disagree on, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought somebody was making a comment. When coalition partners agree to disagree on larger issues, differences don't become fault lines. So you can have differences and disagreements within the coalition because your overarching goal remains the same. Some of the reasons that coalitions may kind of falter are that there's only a single issue that holds them together, and so if that issue is resolved or there's differences around tactics, messaging, some of those things can be a challenge to coalitions. There can be competitions for who's kind of taking on that role. And sometimes coalitions might kind of give way to other more established coalitions. I think coalitions are super important because they don't maintain the status quo, and it gives an opportunity for people with lived experience to be at the decision making table.
Yeah, I appreciate the Nuxel, and I think that it's really powerful to hear what types of ways in which coalitions can kind of further the work, and also being honest and upfront about the fact that there's still challenges that exist within that. So I appreciate it. Now I'm going to pass it over to Chase. Can you talk to us about direct organizing and coalition building and share some of the kind of different highlights of those?
Sure. Well, at our Future LA, we're doing a lot of high-level coalition work, but a lot of that is sort of fueled by direct organizing, right? So Climate Resolve does a lot of grassroots organizing around climate issues and the intersection of housing and climate change and other issues, as does ACE and other members, right? And so as we take that information and build that momentum, it is that people power that we're able to bring to those direct actions. So some of that is a little bit more of the inside baseball, right, where we're thinking about really wonky policy topics and interorganizationally talking about how we're going to approach those, what legislators' opinions are, and how we can arrange those meetings. But once we have a clear sort of legislative path, we're able to activate those bases among all of our groups and really take that action. So the distinction is really between whether you're acting kind of as a representative of that community in your organization, talking to other representatives in sort of a coalition format, or if you're actually on the ground making phone calls, texting, knocking on doors, hosting community meetings, and really drawing out solutions in partnership with community members. And we try to have a mix of the best of both worlds, as we mentioned, trying to center the voices of people with lived experience and having them be in the room when those decisions are being made in coalition is really important. So the more that you can actually blur those lines a little bit, the better, but there's certainly sort of distinct strategies and protocols when we are operating in those spaces.
Thanks, Chase. Appreciate that. And it's one of the things that I find so interesting about this work is what you said about the kind of the wonk versus the kind of on the ground type work with other folks. So appreciate you pointing those out. Kelly, can you share with us a little bit about decision-making processes and what the kind of difference between consensus versus majority and the kinds of pros and cons that come with both of those?
Sure. Okay, so there are two ways to do decision making in a coalition, and the first is the majority. We're all familiar with it. It is our common democracy, and this is where we have an initial consensus that's reached by leadership, and then it's passed to folks to vote on it, right? And I mean, we've got to say it works. It's democracy. There are some pros and cons to this, though, on a coalition. One of the pros of having a majority is that you've got steering, and the vote means solid support for direct action, and you get timely, tangible results. That is, the steering committee puts it out, you get a vote, you do the work, and it moves without diverse voices oftentimes, which could be a con. Here in a majority, the power wins. And so if your coalition is not prepared in a balanced way, where you don't have balanced numbers of those voices of lived experience, where you don't have diverse folks on your coalition in balance with those folks who are power players or know about policy, um, those folks will rule the majority vote. And the point of having those diverse voices is kind of mooted out. And the wheels keep turning. They go along, they say, we've heard, and we're going to do what we want to do. And that's not um, productive for a coalition, because the point is to have these diverse voices. It also could produce unwanted results as far as policy goes, because if those wheels keep turning with an unbalanced coalition and a majority, we're producing things without considering the things that we're supposed to consider, right? Uh, Another major detractor to majority is oftentimes a voting space is unsafe. People have social alignments, they are aligned with the organization where they represent, and then they also have their heartstrings, which bring them to these meetings outside, oftentimes outside of their usual workday. And to cast a vote for something that they don't really want, or that hasn't been acknowledged in discussion, may feel like an unsafe thing to do, and folks may vote in a way that isn't with their heart or isn't with what needs to be done, and maybe is in alignment with their organization's point of view. Um, and also, voting causes members to try to convince one another instead of listening to one another and uplifting that these needs are valid and that they're being presented in these circles for a reason. That being said, we're moving to the consensus, and the consensus is what we use in OFLA. The consensus is used to create space. We are all a steering committee, and I will admit we also do have a steering committee, yes, but we are all a steering committee. We're a think tank, and we move by agreement. And we do this because we're strange bedfellows. We can't convince one another. This would, every time we discussed our bill, it would be like the floor of the assemblies or places where bills like this often go to die. That being said, the pros, and I also want to uplift what Anouk was saying earlier, that with a consensus, there is power sharing, and the power sharing within a coalition is what's important. We don't all come together to kind of run amok and have a weakness there. We draw a consensus, and what we agree on is what makes us strong. So, leading into that, the pros of a consensus are that everyone is heard. It also limits contention because everyone knows that they'll be heard. Difficult conversations are had, and those difficult conversations are important to be had with the right folks. We're having difficult conversations with the folks we need to have the difficult conversations with. And I'm noticing too here, Karen Herrera, this is a great question. How do you establish boundaries and also move forward when indecision and disagreement occurs? This is a great question. One of the things that we do on our leadership development subcommittee is borrowed from a school called Crossroads. They have something called Counsel, and Counsel is being used now in corporate areas. And what we do is literally create the space with the dynamics we want the space to have. That is, this is a safe space. You are here to share. People share their experience, which means that if there's no argument, when someone is sharing, everyone else's job is to witness what this person is saying and really take it in. It's not a contention over a point in a bill. It is simply to hear one another. And indecision is going to happen. It is one of the cons of consensus. It moves more slowly. And it moves more slowly because folks have to come to, we have to come to together what the solution will be. But the strength in that is that once you reach a consensus and once this indecision stops and the consensus is reached, the work that's produced is something that satisfies, well, I want to say everyone, but we know that that's not the case. But really comprehensive solutions to problems can be reached differently than a majority would. And also, too, once you create this consensus process by using counsel, where you frame this safe place to share, you're not going to go at each other's throats, you're going to let each other speak. This process will actually mimic what your policy may do on the floor if your coalition is diverse enough. And you'll have an idea of the same challenges that your policy will face once it gets on the floor. And you can work that out ahead of time. So maybe smooth sailing. We have yet to see. um, and if your bill is produced by consensus, I would generally say it's likely to pass because it will have the things that everyone will want to see. I think that's what I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it. So one of the pieces that has come up in a couple of the different pieces that folks have shared is the importance of centering voices of people with lived expertise. So I wanted to ask you, Tophorn, to share a little bit really quickly about what the importance of that is and how we can do that.
Like I said, thank you again, Sarah. Like I said in the beginning, I think people with lived experience, we've been in a side corner, you know, hidden in a side corner and just kind of hiding, really not trying to be out there. So when an opportunity like this hits, I think it's really important to really uplift it. But sometimes, I mean, like Kelly was saying, well, not sometimes, most of the time, you know, people have been formerly homeless. There's a lot of other stuff that comes with it. And that's where the challenge of it all is. And so I feel like having a voice and centering the voice of people is really tricky because the people with lived experience, there's a lot of things that they need in order to have that voice. You know, they need to get paid, or they need to have childcare. They need to, you know, different things. They need to have food there at the meetings. You know, there's a lot of other things that go into it. But I do feel like HomeRise, we have what's called the HEAT meeting, the highly engaged action team. And that's how we get within our organization. That's how we kind of activate our residents monthly, because we feel like if we don't do that, as time goes by, nobody really gets involved. So UNOXA does a really great job at reaching out to the community. The problem with what we're having for HEAT is the catch for the COVID. So a lot of people that were part of the HEAT organization within our organization kind of just, you know, is either scared, or a lot of them are, you know, ADA, you know, disabilities, or, you know, they just can't work, or they just can't go. So they're not mobile. So and thank God for, of course, you know, Wi-Fi, that we were able to do this on a virtual, because there's a lot of people, had it not been for this, that probably wouldn't participate. So I think that the HEAT meeting is really important for our organization to make sure that the people who want to activate their voice, or who want to share their story, that we have not only, you know, our own organization newsletter, where we also promote and share their success also in a run, you know, because we're actually trying to get everybody in our building that wants to be part of the voice to be part of the run. So that's our next move into really branching the coalition into something bigger than themselves. And also, you know, just being present, you know, in coming here and just being here to kind of just see and let other people see, you know, see her, be her is really where I'm trying to help people. Hello? Hi. So see her, be her, the philosophy that if you see what it looks like from the other side, maybe that will activate other people. And that's how I've been kind of doing it within my own community, to really shine light on what these, you know, run organization, or just using your voice and using that as my bottom base, and really elevating. I'm more like a cheerleader for people who want to go out there, but it's it is a hard catch because, you know, sometimes people just don't want to talk about it. It's just too much. You know, they're still not there. And we really want to be mindful of all that stuff too. But as for those who like to be the voice of people, I think it's really important to, you know, read up and get training and talk to people who've been doing it for a long time, and really at the end of it, just come to your own, you know, belief system of what can you do, how can you be the change, and you know, how can you be effective. And you know, in coalition work, I also feel like Anoxel said, you know, there's power in number. But again, that catch, that I think for me, I believe that to be able to catch people, it has to be at the right time, you know, catching the people at the right time, whether they had problems with their eviction, they're having problems with their management, you know, things like that. Those are the kind of things that I like to take that opportunity and then go on and catch them that way, and then really help them to navigate what their problem is, and then help them with the solution. And if not, they go using, you know, run as our network and other organizations to help bring the power and bring light to that problem. So yeah, so I really do feel like lived experience in this housing model and housing the homeless community, you really do need to be very empathetic, compassionate, and open-minded about, you know, people with lived experience, because sometimes, you know, we just want it all and we just can't get everything done. So we try to, you know, do what we can and, you know, meet them where they are. And yeah.
Thanks, Jutafwin. So I know we're running a little bit short on time, but Kelly, I wanted to give you a chance to answer from the Our Future LA perspective of lifting up and centering voices with lived expertise.
Thank you. I want to uplift again what Joe Porn was saying about lived experience and how there are so many other moving parts to be able to participate in these processes. And I want to challenge these organizations and coalitions today to embody the principles which get you the money to make the change. And that is to take care of your people with lived experience. No one on a coalition should be afraid of homelessness while sitting in a meeting that they're not paid for. No one should be worrying about their internet connection and not be taken care of. You change the lives of the folks with the lived experience so that you can have the richness without the trauma in your meetings. It is hard to sit in a meeting from a place of urgency when people are talking about policies that are going to take years to implement and years to come to fruition, when you're sitting in a place and you don't know whether or not you're going to be there tomorrow. And to carry members that have this lifestyle who have been members of your coalition is it's a crying shame. Care for your lived experience people, change their lives. It makes your org look good. It makes your org look good to say, hey, I'm really helping the homeless, not we've got these folks participating. Give back. The richness that we contribute is the actual solution to the problem. It cannot be done without us. And lived experience folks should be treated that way. If it could be done without our points of view, well, what we've been doing would work. Make that investment. It's an investment in solutions. It's an investment for your organization. Take care of your folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate that. And to close out this section, I'm going to pass it back to Anoxel. I know that you love this question. So when does coalition work finish?
I do. So imagine your coalition won. You guys are amazing, and you have 50% deeply affordable housing inclusion. And you're celebrating, your coalition's celebrating, and everybody disbands. And 2 weeks later, they go to implement it, and they decide, well, they met 50% of the AMI. And therefore, the deeply affordable housing that your coalition won gets diluted because the implementation process, there wasn't people there to follow up on. So what I'm saying is that your coalition work never truly ends until the implementation has been through its course, because your coalition has to stick together to make sure that what you want is truly what actually happens. And oftentimes people don't take that into consideration when they sign up for coalition and are thinking about their capacity. There's a lot of mop-up work that happens in coalitions, and so you have to be at the table until it's done.
Amen. Thanks for that, Knoxville. Appreciate it. All right, so that wraps our first kind of section of our workshop, which is, kind of answering some of the common questions that we've heard and sharing a bit about the coalition work that the folks on the call do. And now we want to transition over to our discussion and start out with the Mentee results. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Chase can share those results. So Chase, over to you for a second.
Yeah, sure. Just want to say, I see we have 8 responses so far, and there are 36 of us in here. So I just want to encourage folks to complete the Mentee. There's only just a few questions. You can skip questions if you don't have an answer, they're not applicable. But okay, good. I see some more answers coming in. So I'll go ahead and share, but feel free to continue to add to this so you can participate in the conversation. So the first thing that we wanted to see was just a feel in the room for how much experience folks have with coalitions. And it seems like it's fairly diverse, right? We have a couple of people who have no experience with coalitions. Some folks with some experience, and then we've got some folks that are very well versed in coalition work. So that's exciting. So we can kind of tailor our answers to questions based on people's experiences. We got kind of a nice diversity in the room in that way. And then we asked folks what has worked. And so we have some answers here talking about coalitions and collaborations having worked best when there are strong, trusting relationships among those involved. I would definitely second that. Trust is a huge part of our coalition work at our future. And that, they say progress moves at the speed of trust, right? So that's a big one. Creating community and supporting each other professionally and personally, using collective voice to achieve goals like raising additional funding for our cause. Yeah, those shared goals and sense of community are really important. I'm seeing common goals multiple times, shared values and expectations, mutual respect, meeting on nights and weekends. Yeah, really putting in the work. I see providing food and providing childcare. Definitely want to circle back right to what Jitaporn and Kelly were saying, right? That supporting people is really, really important, and understanding what people need to actually have a seat at the table. It's not just showing them the table, right? Sometimes you got to move the table. Deep listening I'm seeing here, and appreciating the time and investment that people are putting in. These are all really, really great things for what has worked. And so we can go and see what has not. Oops, apologies. And let's see what folks have to say. Yeah, different goals and values in mind, difficult to unite and bring a focus on one specific topic, circular conversations and difficulty making decisions, forgetting the ground rules of civil engagement, lack of participation. So those are two kind of themes. I'm seeing kind of like a common thread there, right? Where we're talking about like agreement. We've talked about the power that we can build on like the things that we have in common. And then having the divisive differences can kind of pull us away from those things. And we've certainly seen that. And I'm sure if folks have questions, there is a Q&A on this feature, and you can also drop it in the chat. But I think we can get into how Run and how Our Future LA have addressed those things. And then we asked folks if they've been part of any wins. You see Measure W, Alameda County, building a subcommittee dedicated to bringing folks into the wonky, complicated side of politics, and building consensus on countywide support for state legislation, and getting homeless encampments cleanups with a paid community ambassador. So that's great. It's great to see that people are already out there winning in coalitions. And this is encouraging too. I was worried that some people were going to have a more pessimistic view of coalitions. It looks like we all think they're at least somewhat effective. So that's good. That, you know, I would imagine you would think that if you were here. And so now we have one question here, but then if people want to open it up into the chat for questions as well, feel free.
Thanks, Chase, and thanks for putting together the Mentee. You are always so good at that, and it's super helpful. So I started jotting down a few questions for you all while I was kind of looking at those results. And the way that we're doing this Q&A is if folks have questions that they want to have asked, please share those in the chat. And there's also an option if you're joining through the actual conference website, there's a Q&A button, so you can press that and enter those in there, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. And just based on what was in the kind of Mentee, I have a couple questions for you all, and in this, whoever has an answer, you can answer, panelists. So feel free to hop in. So the first thing is, let me find where, this was a question that was shared in the chat while you all were talking. So how do we keep a coalition non-hierarchical while also maintaining momentum for action items?
Can I take that?
Go for it.
I'm going to go back to the process of counsel, and this is something I'm willing to distribute. I've trained on it with Crossroads itself. The CEO of Snap happens to be an alum there, and he's using it at Snap, and now it's spread to Netflix. And what this really does is even the playing field in a way that you might not find in an office or meeting setting. It's almost kind of meditative. You leave all of who you are in your position outside. You leave that outside. And this is simply about the expression of ideas on the one topic. There are commitments that you make in creating a council space, and you make a commitment not to interrupt one another, which is an easy commitment to make in the beginning before you've heard everybody's stuff. You make a commitment that you'll be respectful. And the commitment is to preserve this space. You don't necessarily have to make it to one another. You don't even have to like one another. But once this space is laid out, just like in a boxing ring, there are rules of engagement. And in this process, people keep their cool because there is no response. You just get to hear, you witness, and you weigh. There is no power dynamic. There's no decision that's made in council. It doesn't come to a vote. You hear, and then you process it. And then you go on to do the work, but in the same safe space, and you make sure that you're heard. And so this is, council generates a process where, because people generate empathy here in this space, that they build bridges rather than create contention. And because you're leaving your power at the door, either you leave it at the door or you bring it all in to share. Everyone is on the same level in this space. So it eliminates that. Either you can bring it all and you guys can share it and be powerful together, or you can all be vulnerable together, but it's your choices. And this really brings the humanity into what we're doing. Democracy is about the person. And oftentimes people do come in with other weights, and it's important to address that here in these spaces, because folks want what they want, and they come into these coalitions with directives, and they come into these coalitions with feelings. And this council kind of allows you to be a person first, and that changes the way you relate on a coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Anoxul, I saw your hand go up. Very well done on the hand. Good job. Go ahead, Anoxul.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, and I also wanted to add that I think one of the things that kind of evens the hierarchy is when we're leaving our titles and our egos at the door in order to center the people with lived experience. There is a power dynamic often when you have paid staff people who their passion and their belief and their wanting to be there are there. but they're also paid members, and so there's a conscious kind of almost step back that has to happen in order to equalize the space for people with lived experience. And I think in that process, kind of what Kelly was mentioning with the counseling, that's where the evening of the hierarchy happens, is because you're actually you're making way for the people that have been impacted the most by the decisions in the room.
Thank you, Knoxville and Chase.
Yeah, no, I love everything that everyone said. I would say some logistical ways that that kind of manifests itself is in facilitation and accountability, right? I think Kelly outlined a lot of the really, really important values that you need to apply to those spaces, but really having somebody who is watching that, right? And able to call moments out when they happen. Because we all, occasionally can get carried away, and it's important to have somebody remind us and welcome us back into that space, and kind of measure, who wants to speak. So having even just like a simple mechanism, Axel raised his hand and I raised mine, right? We're establishing kind of like an order, making sure everybody gets a chance to speak, to kind of establish that level playing field for speaking, but then also enforcing other values, right? Like taking space and making space. We notice that somebody has spoken a lot, even just consulting people that might be a little bit more quiet, right? We touched a little bit on how not everyone approaches the space in the same way, but those ideas are really important. So even if it's just for somebody to say, yeah, I totally agree with that, but as long as we get that verbal confirmation from them is really important. So just curating that space and really making sure that it's maintained.
Thank you all. All right, so another question that came up for me while Anoxul was sharing earlier on about just kind of, I think it was when you were talking about run, but you brought up something, I don't remember how you described it, but in my mind, I would describe it as like turf wars, how some groups will be kind of doing work in an area, and then when another group comes in and they want to do the work, you can get in kind of this like back and forth of people wanting to take credit or et cetera, et cetera. How would you all say is a good way to deal with folks either wanting to take credit for something or feeling like they almost own a specific type of issue or policy within the field?
That's a really great question. This is where I really want people to be centering people with lived experience, because they will tell you to cut that, out real quick, because they're not about the superficial credit. They're not about the superficial, those kinds of wins. They're about the real tangible impact, like results. And they don't want to hear about that. They don't want that to happen. And so if we're centering people with the lived experience at the table, they're going to pull us around to kind of cutting that out, figuring out how we can come together. And oftentimes we may find out that we can't, but our coalition's approach, our strategy, our targets, our actions and tactics are more suitable to our members, and therefore are the direction that we want to go. And we can figure out ways to complement the other coalition or agitate if needed. On their strategy, their approach, and their direction.
Yes, I appreciate that. Is there anyone else from the panel that wants to chime in on that one?
I thought that was great. I would just add that no, just like owning conflict as a part of human interaction, and not being afraid of conflict, but actually having like things that you want to do to resolve conflict, right? What plans for how you address that? Because if it's not a part of your coalition, then it's going to gum up the works a lot more.
Kelly?
I love what Anak said, and Chase, thank you for backing that up. I also want to say that when you're in these spaces, these are places where you get to exhibit the highest of your own emotional intelligence. And when you see that a person wants those flowers, give them their flowers. Just give it to them. Because if you're emotionally intelligent, you don't care about the credit. And if you need to give them the credit to get the work done, give it to them and keep it pushing.
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and, oh,
Yes,
sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna, I was just gonna piggyback what Kelly said. I mean, you're awesome, Kelly. I definitely, you know what you're talking about. I definitely feel like that's it. You know, when we have these space and we have these conversations, we make it important enough to speak on it. I think in some ways that's sometimes just good enough for right now, you know. And you know, when me, it's kind of like how me and Anoxo, we have lived experience, but his is different than mine. His is, and we're different in how we approach things, and we're different in how our ideology. But when we know that there's something that we want to push through, we try to, you know, agree to disagree. But then, you know, it becomes easier. But what happens is if you're working with the coalition that they are having power issues, to me, I feel like that will be a problem, you know. And I think then we would have to discuss about what is it that you're doing, because if there is a problem and conflict within, you know, I think Kelly's definitely right. If somebody wants to take, you know, credit where, you know, they didn't get credit, cool, good for you. You got that confidence for you. But at least the people that did the work and didn't know was their part, at least we know, you know. That's small stuff. The big stuff is just, you know, when you're dealing with those kind of organizations that think that they're better than what we're doing, that's when we have problem, because it's the people on top, not the people on the bottom. It's the people on top, and if we don't see eye to eye, we cannot work together. And that's just we're not going to sit there and pull teeth and try to fight, because we can't come in if the first meetings and we're still talking about it, then second meeting, then I mean we would have to, you know, it's not like hunky dory. Oh, okay, well, let's just all join because we're trying to get Muni for all. You know, San Francisco and our team have been trying to get Muni for all. But right now we just got Muni for 17 and under for youth, and we have free for disabilities and seniors. So we're still working for the other part. But like I said, I mean, it does get tricky, and it's seasonal. I feel like depends on who's there and, you know, what they're in the mood for. So, but at least we're here. We're, you know, we're happy to talk about it. We're happy to share our success. I'm happy to share my success and the support that HomeRise has given me to where I am today. And really it is because of Anoxo and people in the community that see you quickly. And then he was very smart to have seen me quickly, you know, 4 years before I got the BA, you know, right when I moved in, and was already prepping me throughout the years. And then, you know, which each thing he'll just nominate me for BCLI and I'll just go for it. But it's really those kind of people, that's how we catch them, and that's how we uplift them, and that's how we try to bring them to our team, you know, but we don't force anybody. And that's the beauty of collaboration and coalition and being part of Run. There is no, I don't have to, you know, you're not pulling teeth, you're not, you know, making me do anything. I'm doing it at will, and I'm happy to be here to show support for all the good work you guys have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and I love the love pouring in the chat. So always appreciate folks uplifting other folks. And one of the things that is I noticed on the Mentee is there were comments about how one of the things that helps with coalition work and helps build power is when you trust each other. But trust, and even you all were talking about different ways of being vulnerable and discussing different things. But how do you develop that trust, especially you know, we've been in a virtual world for 2 years, and there's a lot of different folks coming from different places. So how do you actually get to a point where you can trust each other in this type of work? And Axel, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna let somebody else take it. I totally brain farted. Sorry.
I'll circle back to you, Chase. Go for it.
Oh, okay.
I have so been there. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think, you know, it's worth recognizing where like hurt has occurred, right? There are groups that have been wronged. You know, a lot of grassroots organizations have been kind of swayed around by larger organizations. So kind of recognizing where you're coming from, I think, is really important. You know, Climate Resolve is kind of a wonky organization. We do grassroots organizing, but we're talking about an issue that you don't see the immediate connection always with climate and housing. And so for us, it's really important to go the extra mile and really be willing to show up for people and do things that might not be directly related to your mission. Not everything needs to be a quid pro quo. It's really about that relationship building and coming in and understanding what folks are up to and you know, what their priorities are beyond just the coalition. And I think that can go a long way, you know, going to a rally or a meeting and just getting to know another organization's work on a deeper level. For me, that has allowed me to develop relationships with people that are I think, really meaningful and span beyond the coalition. And I think that trust is what is really, really difficult to grab a hold of. It's certainly a lot of extra work, right? But I think that if your mentality is extractive when you come into the coalition, then of course you're not going to build that trust because you're trying to get something out of it. Even if you're both, you have mutual goals, that foundation is going to be a lot stronger. And when conflict arises, it's much easier to navigate.
Thanks, Chase. Anaxul, do you remember yet?
Yeah,
Sure.
basically, I'm just summing up what was just said already. Meeting people where their needs are at. So you know, knowing how to really allow people to be at the table. Knowing the right give and take. So sometimes you might recognize that, hey, this target works really well for our organization, but we recognize that target might be problematic for another one of our organizations. And so, you know, moving that, checking egos and roles and keeping accountable to the people with lived experience, the most impacted, I think really does help create trust.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, you know, one of the things that's interesting to me is I think it was on the kind of tough things for folks, and then also was about bandwidth to be able to be part of coalitions. And then within the pieces that like help, it was listed, you know, like childcare and different types of support, which in my mind, those kind of go together. Like you create bandwidth through even offering those types of supports. And it's striking to me that three of our panelists are folks with lived expertise. And then Chase, you are from a type of organization that a lot of times folks don't lump in with like the housing and homelessness work. And I imagine that one of the reasons for that is you all obviously with just straight climate have a few things going on that you can focus on. So I'm curious from you all, what are ways that that bandwidth can be helped, that there can be opportunities for creating more bandwidth for folks so that they can be involved within coalition work? And that can be just ideas or from your own experience has helped you create that bandwidth for yourself, or from others kind of sharing with you different things. Kelly.
Okay, so first line of fire for participation and comfortable participation is good tech. If someone joins a coalition and they don't have good tech, there should be no problem with furnishing them with an absolute computer and furnishing them with internet for a year. It's probably $120 to make sure that the person can get to the meeting no matter what. That being said, those things like childcare, improved quality of life means people that can participate. Everyone doesn't actively participate in democracy because they have other things going on. And you have to realize that this person doesn't work in this sector. And you might want to look at what it may look like to have people with lived experience actually working in the sector, to actually employ them. This is their job. This is their life. It's their wheelhouse. They are singularly representing what the job description is. And so, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to improve this person's quality of life by giving them a job.
Thank you, Kelly. And Knoxville, do you still have your hand up from the last one, or is your hand up for now?
My bad.
No, no, you're fine. I didn't. I just I didn't want to cut you off. Anyone else want to share? Chase, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a convener, and this is something that you all have done, Sarah, is offering money, right? In a lot of ways, time is money, and if you can dedicate some funding for participation for members, right, they are bringing their expertise, either their lived expertise or policy expertise. It's not always easy to do, right? That is a challenge too, but that is one of the beauty of coalitions is there are a lot of voices. And so advocacy on the policy level, but also on the funding level, right? Recognizing like we need the resources to be able to do this work. If you want to see this outcome, people cannot work for free. And so I think that is a big part of it, and that can be done collaboratively. Another thing I think that helps is having very clear goals at the outset and good engagement with potential participants as to what they want to accomplish. Because if somebody is really invested in the mission or the goals of that coalition, I think it makes it easier to make time for that as it's directly related to what you're trying to do. And then the final thing is being efficient, and that can be one of the more difficult pieces at times. But really respecting people's time and being accountable to the tasks, right, that people have. So I think the organizing committee that we have, having a few people that we know have a little bit more dedicated time that can send out notes, that can task things out very specifically to people and break it down in the simplest way possible, and streamline those communications. I think it just makes it a lot easier to participate, right? And having those levels of engagement. It's like, okay, I don't have a lot of time, but the people organizing this committee have told me if I spend 5 minutes, this is what I can do. If I have an hour a week, this is what I can do. And that I think is really helpful to be able to meet people where they're at with capacity as well.
Thanks, Chase.
I also
Kelly, go
want
ahead.
to no.
Oh, go ahead, Judith Bourne.
So I was going to say the way we do it in San Francisco in terms of the bandwidth, I really have to say the reason why I've been so passionate and so successful is because, again, I'm in an organization, HomeRise. I'm in a building that is very supportive of what I do, and they're really rock stars. When COVID hit, immediately, because I'm in the family building with SROs, but immediately they reached out to Monkey Brains and we were able to get Wi-Fi. Now I can't say the same about every other building, but again, I do feel, this is my personal opinion, that the people that are on top, the staff, I mean, if they are not passionate about what they do, and if they're just there because they're for the money or whatever, there's a big difference and there's a big fine line. Because we as people with lived experience, we could see that really well. So again, I feel like really spoiled by HomeRise because they, when the big things happen, when a disaster happened, not only did they, work with me and support me, not only with just rent, because we have 30%, like Knoxville said, in San Francisco, supportive housing. So it's when we have no cash, they quickly adjusted our rent. So these are like little things, but they're big things, things that at that time when the COVID hit, I was 2 months from getting my BA. So you could see where the stress level, and I didn't know how to use computers or anything. So I really want to advocate for the staff too in these organizations, because we have 17 buildings with HomeRise. But again, every building has their own management team, their own team. And it really makes a big difference in terms of care. I'm talking about the same week, March 16th, 17th, I think we got it on the 19th or 20th for the whole building. So these are, and also with our EBT card, we get Comcast and AT&T for $10, well, $9.99. And, it is nice to have that too, as convenient, just in case, you need it. I have that as my backup because, I just feel like, why miss out on these opportunities to better your life, And so I just wanted to share that, what we do here at HomeRise.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see not only like ideas but things in action because that's helpful. Kelly, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to one of a wonderful point that not brought up in the chat, how stipends go a long way. He said to recognizing emotional lab or of lived experience. They don't get low income and no income people in trouble with reporting requirements. I absolutely want to lift up something that may be taboo, and Sarah and I talked about it, and that it may be tacky to bring up, but I think that it warrants discussion in this circle. You know, who we are as organizations and coalitions really speaks for itself when you won't pay somebody because it will mess up their low or no income reporting requirements. And in order for us to embody who we say we are as an organization, to keep people in this position and only pay them a little bit because it might mess up their low income situation is diametrically opposed to the point of what we're doing. And so really lift up and think about how these people who you're getting your solutions from are living, and really lift up what those people can do without that sense of urgency and why it is taboo. Oh, we don't pay them. We let them continue to live that way. It is a let them eat cake attitude when we're doing something for our lives and not just for our lives, the lives of others and our kids. And people don't realize that because for most people, it's a day at work. This is our lives. It takes everything to be here. It takes everything to tell your business to folks so that they can fix your problem and you can help fix it. And to keep your lived experience people in these situations, or to dance around the situation as if it doesn't exist and that's not why they're there, is something we really have to look at. Will we embody what we do? Will we really embody with these lived experience folks what we say we do? Are we about it?
Also, I just want to, also, I forgot to mention at Home Rise, the way we pay our people from the highly engaged action team. Again, this is all internal organization support. So in our building, we have what's called the AWA bucks. So each building has their own supposedly bucks, but we at the Arnett Watson, we're very, so we have a store. It's an Arnett Watson store. And most of the stuff that's in that store is really things that people really need, you know, cleaning supplies. We also have hygiene cards. And so when you go to a heat meeting, you know, one of our policy, we get $10, $10. So each month, if we wanted to, we can also go to these meetings, and that's how we activate from the inside. It doesn't have to be real cash. It can just be cash that's worth something within the organization, right? Because I could, you know, go to these different groups. Well, different groups will give me $5. The heat will give me 10, depending on the group, you know, art groups, whatever. And then, you know, with $60 AWA bucks, I can get what, a crock pot, a fan, you know, things that I probably wouldn't buy on my own. But because I have that fake AWA money, it gives people incentive and want to better, you know, come and join and be part. And that's also another way of thinking about, you know, something outside the box that we've, you know, try to do that for our community, because, you know, money is money if you make the money worth something, you know. And for me, the AWA bucks is worth it. And I do go and I make, you know, and I do utilize the store because I want to support this money making, you know, and I do cheer for it. But like I said, you know, I'm just throwing this idea out for those other organizations, you know, and using something like that could also uplift and give more confidence for those, you know. And even if it's not real money, we still think of it as real money, because when we go to the store, we're getting real things that we really need, right? So.
Thank you. Yeah, I so appreciate that. So we have 5 minutes left, and I have one more question that is a bit of a two-parter, but we're going to try to see how many of y'all can answer this beefy question in the next 5 minutes. Try to squeeze in as much as we can get. So one of the things I noticed in the Mentee, and then someone had shared a similar question in the chat, is this type of work, there's 1.5 million things that need to change and that could be done in terms of the work that we do. So I'm curious, how do you decide on kind of what, of those systemic issues or policies or whatever to focus on? And then at what point do you move from discussing that or discussing things generally, whether it's consensus, et cetera, and actually moving into implementation and action? I saved the big one for last, sorry. Kelly, go ahead, I see your hand.
That was an accident. I was trying to unmute myself to urge Chase on.
I think he heard you.
The consensus process. Are you going to do it, Chase?
Go, Kelly. You started to say something. Go for it.
That was an accident too. The consensus process is pretty slow. And I will say that once it's reached, everyone is ready to work and let's get going. And when a theory is agreed on, there is a eureka moment when you work in a consensus and somebody says that'll work. And then everyone's been held back for so long that you just jump on it. That moment happens organically and you'll know when it is. I could be wrong. Tell me, Chase.
No, I think that's right, Kelly. I was going to say, like, I think it depends on how broad your coalition scope is too. But I just want to go back to that really fundamental part that, the coalition, how it starts is honestly one of the most important parts, I think, of the coalition, really setting those clear expectations and goals. And in that case, that's where that consensus building is happening around those ideas, right? So you might have to start more broadly. In our future LA, we had those sort of 4 pillars that we agreed upon, and then we had to have more conversations that identified the priority for the legislative strategies that were attached to those. But that piece is so fundamentally important because you've set your sights on something. And I would say, at the smaller level in committees, when, like Kelly mentioned, people are ready to make moves, you can kind of tell when you're having a conversation with a group of like 30 people and you're kind of throwing ideas out there. Usually there's some excitement, right? If not, then you might not have hit what people are ready to build a consensus and work on. And sometimes, if you're looking at a bunch of non-video screens and it's just a bunch of names on a wall, it's really helpful to just ask, does anyone not want to work on this, and be able to move forward that way, hear out any of the con sides of a particular argument, and you can see pretty quickly, okay, there's issues with this one, issues with that one. This one's very clear. Everybody really wants to work with this. So even process of elimination can be really helpful after you've done that initial brainstorm.
Thanks, Chase and Kelly. Anyone else have anything they want to share on that one? No pressure. All right, so I know we have 1 minute left, so I just want to close this out. But as I do that, I just want to thank each of you so much for joining this panel, and also give a second if anyone has anything else that you want to share about coalition work, or just a shout out of any kind. So I'll be quiet for a second in case any of you 4 have anything else that you want to share.
Yes, I expect every single person on this call to join Resident United Network. You can go to the House of California website and sign up right now. I will see y'all on our care calls on Wednesday at 1.
First person who, I was gonna say, sorry. First 3 people who come see me get our swag. I'm here.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you all so much. And thanks everyone for the hard work that you do, both with our panelists and everyone on this call. You all are out there fighting the fight. So we see you, we appreciate you. Keep it up. And remember that you can join coalitions and do it together. Hang in there. Coalitions can be hard, but a lot can happen. So appreciate you all. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you guys. Party time, networking.
Thank you.